John, somebody who really helps us do our job. He's a terrific guy. Clay Holmes joins us on the show.
Yeah, he's having a great spring for the Mets. That looks like a fantastic pickup for them. Obviously needed pickup, and it looks like he is going to be a very good starter. I know people are going to say it's only spring training, but he's looked great. He's added pitches, and you're right, he's a great guy for us. We only have great guys on the show because, of course, the guys who turn us down, they're not great guys. If you accept being on the show, you are a great guy, but he really is.
Stop John on the street. He'll give you the list of all the people who turn us down.
Our last show, that's gonna be the show. 60 minutes of the guys turning us down.
That's how we go out with a bang. We're
Yeah.
just going to give that list in alphabetical order. Anyway, we'll be asking Clay about his transition to both the Mets and to starting pitching. John and I will dive into the Gerrit Cole injury and what it means for the Yankees, Vlad Guerrero, and where he stands with his contractual stuff with the Blue Jays. We'll play hit and error at the end if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John, Aaron Boone kept using a term, there's no way to sugarcoat this. And he was talking about losing Gerrit Cole. Of course, I love there's a saying that Buck Showalter, the former Yankee and Met manager, used all the time. You know, when things go wrong, they don't stop the season for you and allow him to get fixed and then start the season again. The Yankees are going to have to play the 2025 season without their ace, without Gerrit Cole. Uh, just broadly, what do you think about their ability to do that?
I mean, it's a rough situation. And again, Aaron Boone is the expert on sugarcoating things, so I will defer to him on that. Yeah, there's no way to make this sound good. They went into spring training with the best rotation in the league, in their league at least, with two aces, really. Max Fried is an ace too, so they still have an ace. They still have a decent rotation, but they don't have depth anymore. And the situation in terms of what they can get is not great. It's unfortunate that Quintana's still not out there. There are a couple of free agents, but they're mostly innings eaters at this point. I mean, the only two guys who possibly, and I think they're long shots to be traded, or could be traded, but again, I don't think they're going to be, are Dylan Cease and Sandy Alcantara. And I don't know that the Yankees have what it takes to get them. Are they going to give up Wells or Volpe or Dominguez for a guy who's here briefly, rental like Cease? I don't know that they would do that. I doubt it. But they're in a tough spot.
Yeah, John, I think you and I, we've talked about this obviously off the show, is there's a sense that the Padres would like to go for it, at least to begin the year, and that would mean keeping Dylan Cease. There's probably a feeling in Miami after Alcantara missed all of last season after his own Tommy John surgery to build up his value again by getting into the season, though I suspect if they heard the right names, they'd act now. They're in a clearly a total rebuilding situation. But I think you hit on for me, a key issue, which is over the last 4 years, I don't think any team has traded more prospects, especially pitching prospects, than the Yankees. They've made a ton of trades. And the other thing is their prospect base is backed up. They've had a lot of injuries and poor performance. And it's always, I'm sure you have them in your life also. I have Yankee fans in my life like saying, why don't they go get Alcantara? And I'm like, well, if Alcantara was actually available, 15, 20 teams would be trying to get him, and the Yankees might be towards the back of the list because they just, unless to your point, they're going to trade their starting catcher or their starting shortstop or, something like that, where they include that, they're not going to move to the front of the list. There are going to be teams with way more prospects of desire, just go, what's available. Look at top 100 list. The Yankees don't have guys on those, look at, except for Dominguez. And so anyway, I think you made a key point there. It's not the time of year where you make trades because there's not guys available. But even if you did, why would the Yankees get them?
Well, the only thing is they're more desperate than the other. You're right. There will be 15 teams lining up, absolutely, at least. But they are a little more desperate, so they might be willing to overpay. But what does that entail? I mean, like I said, I doubt they give up their starting shortstop, uh, catcher, or left fielder. I just don't see it happening. They're in a very very difficult spot. They came in as the American League favorite. I don't see them that way now. Unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation. I don't think many people probably do. We also have Stanton. He has no timetable. I mean, I guess that's better than out for the year, but out for the year is still on the table for Stanton at this point, right? I mean, this is as bad a spring as you can have.
Yeah, the Yankees have had a destructive spring, not only because they've lost a lot, but they've lost a lot in the areas where they can't afford to lose a lot. To your point, and again, I agree with you, John. I think that you could make a case that they had the best rotation in the American League to begin this spring training. But the thing they did have is depth behind that group. And it's not just Cole. They'll be without Luis Heel for the first 3 months of the season. So they're down two starters, which means all of a sudden you're going from, hey, can they trade Marcus Stroman to the way things line up? Marcus Stroman might start the first game or two of the season. And they need him suddenly. They're going to have to push Will Warren probably up into this or depend on Carlos Carrasco, who's been really a bad pitcher for the last 2 years. So they are in this kind of survive and advance. And the other area I thought they couldn't lose any place was right hand hitting because they don't have a ton of quality right hand hitting. Do we include DJ LeMahieu in that after he's been so bad the last few years? Either way, he's not playing right now. Stanton is a mystery. He was going to hit right in the middle of their lineup, probably cleanup, in their lineup and be a force when you see lefty. I mean, I expect you're going to see a ton of. I would not be surprised if Nestor Cortez and Jose Quintana both pitch against the Yankees in the first series of the year. And, I would think Eduardo Rodriguez and maybe even Jordan Montgomery pitch against them in the second series of the year. People are going to load up lefties unless the Yankees prove they
Right.
can hit them. And those pitchers will avoid Aaron Judge like he's plutonium and then go after the rest of the lineup, and they'll have to prove that they could do it. And those are two areas they've taken hits at besides losing a couple of relief pitchers. And by the way, they lost starting depth. JD Brubaker's a guy they've spent the last 18 months healing, hoping he'd be rotation depth. No, Chase Hampton is a guy who came back from a problem last year. They hope he'd be depth during the season. He needed Tommy John. I mean, they have taken some severe body blows 162 games left in their season.
Yeah, they might as well bring in all these guys that are out there still, right? I mean, how much could they be asking for? Corbin, Gibson, Kyle Gibson, Spencer,
Turnbull, Turnbull.
Turnbull, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. They might as well bring them all in because, look, the most right thing that anybody has said, and we probably, some of us raised our eyebrows when he said it, is when Marcus Stroman said, I'm a starter, we were like, oh, yeah, okay, great, good for you. That's the most honest and correct thing anybody has said in the spring for the Yankees.
What he should have said is, I'm an ace. I mean,
Well, he's Dave Freed. Freed's
yeah.
the ace. Come on, let's not get
Yeah,
carried away.
I think the column I wrote that day, John, was this will be a non-issue. Like
Right.
they'll be lucky if they have to make that decision. And at this point, they need him to stay healthy and pitch like he did for the first like 3 months of the last season. Because look, if I were trying to spin it at all, if I was trying to be more boonish, so to speak, and see a positive, the Rangers won the World Series 2 years ago and got like six starts out of Jacob deGrom, who they spent a ton of money on. Scherzer was hurt by the time they got to the postseason. They kind of got through it. Remember, it's not that many months ago, John. We're sitting at the beginning of the World Series and saying, where the Yankees have an advantage starting rotation over the Dodgers, which didn't really turn out to be true. But as we know, the Dodgers kind of got through with two and a half starters to win the World Series. Now, they had the Dodger lineup, the Dodger bullpen, the Dodger defense. So I guess just broadly, I would say, there's just a lot of pressure on the rest of the Yankee team to be good. Like, I'm not really positive about this lineup. I know they're going to try to be better on defense. I'd like to see that happen before I kind of like say, yep. But anyway, just broadly.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking back at that World Series. Yeah, the Yankees to me had an opportunity. I know the Dodgers were favored. they should have had the advantage in the rotation. Give Dave Roberts credit, a story that we both worked on and you originally broke. He was staying with the Dodgers, and good for them. I was just in their camp. It is amazing what goes on there, that they were able to win a World Series with Jack Flaherty, who the Yankees rejected, and Yamamoto coming back with a shoulder situation, and Buehler, who had not looked good in the regular season. It's really amazing what they're able to do, and that team is unbelievable. I know they have a couple of not little injuries, but injuries in their bullpen to Kopech and Phillips, but they've got like five other people who can close games in that bullpen. They have like six aces. It's amazing, and they just locked up Dave Roberts, as we both reported, and that's terrific. And the other big news, of course, I think at least that we worked on yesterday was Vlad Guerrero. And, it's going to be interesting. I'm kind of the belief that he may end up going back to the Jays. I know it's very negative when, things break off in spring training, as they did with Judge a couple of years ago with the Yankees, and they are pretty far apart. But I do believe he'd like to go back there. Ken Rosenthal followed our story, which suggested that the offer was about $500 million, but deferred, so really only worth between $400 and $450, by saying that Guerrero told him he'd stay for $500. I'm not sure why, his camp would say that out loud. Here's our price. We're willing to stay for $500. Why put a limit on it? I mean, Soto was great at not saying anything, and nobody knew until the final moment when he decided to go to the Mets where he was going. That's really the way to do it. But I mean, Guerrero is a great hitter, a terrific guy. But obviously, it's he or his camp can't stop mentioning it, I guess, because it's already come out, right, that he's told Enrique Rojas that he'd stay for under 600. Now they've told Ken Rosenthal they'll stay for 500. I mean, I guess 500 would be a great deal, but why put a limit on it? I think he's making a mistake.
Yeah, and then the question becomes, if the Blue Jays were willing to do something in the $450 million range for 14 years. Again, it's not my money, John. I would
Right.
say that's probably a little too much for a guy who plays first base. Uh, and you might, didn't have great seasons for a couple of seasons 2 years ago and 3 years ago, but you're willing to go this far. You're Rodgers. You have more money than even Steve Cohen. You've had trouble keeping or getting players up there. We're talking about spreading $50 million over 14 years for Rodgers. I mean, if you really want to get this done, and 500 is a real number, then I think you could get it done. The question is, should you? Not could
Yeah,
you?
you know what I say about this with the Jays? I mean, this is no scoop here. We may have had a scoop on Guerrero, but this is no scoop here. They have trouble getting guys to go there. He's a guy who's a Canadian citizen, grew up partly in Montreal. His dad obviously was a star with the Expos before he moved on to the Angels. Um, I think they have no choice. They misplayed this because they offered what 150 a few years ago, and I think last year Devers was the comp, and I'm not exactly sure where they were, but they didn't get even there, I don't believe. And now they're getting closer, and they're realizing we're only a year away, and things have changed. I mean, maybe nobody could have foreseen where the market was going, but he had a huge year last year as opposed to the year before. Hit 323, and Soto signed for 765 million. Well, he's not Juan Soto, doesn't have quite the cachet, certainly not the consistency. Who does? I get it. I mean, he is a guy with cachet. He is a guy who is still 25. He turns 26 Sunday. So as we do this, he is still 25 years old. I think they're going to have to overpay. I don't see any other way out of it. This is a team that's a huge market team. They can't get guys to go there. He is beloved there, and he wants to stay. So I think eventually they're going to have to bite the bullet and at least compromise from where they were. You may say he's not. He's playing first base. He's not he's not Juan Soto, but I don't think they have any choice.
Yeah, the only choice is if you're willing to do what they're doing, but and I'll finish the sentence here with I heard what you said, which is they have trouble getting people there. Is could they spread $500 million in a different way to try to win? The thing that they probably couldn't do if they were spreading 500 million is get a star there, right? Like this is their
Right.
chance. This is their chance to either get or retain a star because clearly they've been trying for several years now to get that kind of player, and they're not. Now, I'm not exactly sure why that's the case. I think Toronto's a great city. I think if they had it going
Right. And the
on,
ballpark is fantastic, right?
yeah,
I mean, they
yeah.
rebuilt it. They did a great job with the facility down in Dunedin and an even better, amazing job in Canada.
John, I will say this is I think if they had it going on, people would want to go there. I think is the reality is they haven't had it, they haven't won a playoff game in quite a while. They obviously haven't won a championship since the early 1990s when they repeated in 92 and 93. So I actually think they would be a destination point because they have the money. They've shown they'll spend it. Nobody's taking it. So the question is, would they begin to change their perspective if Vlad stayed, and that would help them because I think there's a power there to be built, and it just hasn't been built under this current group. And I think those
Yeah.
guys are in some trouble, right? Like, is Russ Atkins going to keep his job? Is John Schneider going to keep his job? Is Mark Shapiro? I mean, they've got to do some winning, which is, I think, why they're trying to spend the money right now.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a place could become a destination place if they ever get it going.
Yeah, I mean they spent this winter. They spread it around. They didn't spend 500 million, but they brought in some good players. I mean Hoffman, Scherzer, Santander, Jimenez in a trade. But I do think if you lose Guerrero, you're losing the anchor of the team for I know he's going to want 14 or does want 14, 15 years, but at least for the next 7, 8, 9 years, that's huge. I mean this is a guy who is one of the best, I believe, one of the best 6 or 7 hitters in baseball. And he's up there with, he's certainly below Judge and Ohtani and Soto, but he's in that next category, maybe below Freeman, but arguably in the top five. I just don't see how they let him leave, and unfortunately, they misplayed it. They should have gone higher earlier, right? I mean, 150. Why not have gone to 200? It's easy. Hindsight's 2020. I get it, but the reality of the situation is they have little choice, in my opinion.
Yeah, the price has hardly ever come down. A guy who did make a good deal this offseason, Clay Holmes, to become a starting pitcher for the New York Mets. 3 years, 36 million, was it, John? Is that what he
I
said?
think it was 38. Didn't you have that story?
I did. I have some
You remember
cloudiness.
your own scoops.
Yeah, I'm messed up here, John. Anyway, Clay Holmes will be joining us next on the show with Joel Sherman Jon Heyman. John and I are so happy to be joined by one of the Mets' newest starting pitchers. We have to remember that because we covered Clay Holmes as a reliever for several years with the Yankees. He's now going to be a key part of the Mets starting rotation in 2025. Clay Holmes, thank you for joining the show.
Good to be here with you guys.
Clay, I mean, there's an obvious place to start. You've made 3 starts this spring training. It hardly on paper could be going better. It's 9 2/3 innings, 2 hits, 13 strikeouts, no runs. Why is the transition going so well?
Yeah, I mean, first off, you said it. It's 3 starts. It's early, but I think for me the biggest part is I knew when I signed here there was a plan in place, and as far as my throwing progression, pitch mix, all those things, and having that early on, kind of knowing what I needed to do and wanted to do, and having that mapped out has been to me a key part of where I am. Right now, I definitely feel there's a really good foundation as far as where we're at, with the workload building up, with the pitch mix. At this point, it's a matter of getting more of the game reps, the miles, and seeing batters 2 or 3 times and seeing how it all, unfolds from here. But there's a really good foundation right now, and I'm excited to keep building off of it.
Why did you want to be a starter, and why did you think you could do it? I could take my guess. It's that being a closer in New York and not being Mariano Rivera is a nightmare. But what's your answer? Why did you want to do that?
Man, I'll say I enjoyed every second of my time there. Being a closer and being in New York. I mean, it was a great, fantastic 3 years. I loved every second of it, and it was just one of those things that kind of organically started unfolding throughout the year last year. At the end, I started mixing in a couple more pitches, the four seam. I was messing around with the changeup, catch play toward the end of the year. And it was one of those things where, that stuff started organically happening, basically because, I was starting to evolve more as a pitcher. I knew I was going to evolve a little more. And there was some early interest about starting. And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to expand my arsenal a little bit and there's an opportunity here, man, let's go for it. Yeah, I think this side of the pitching it's a little more game planning, a little more analytical, strategic. I think that excites me, and it's a little bit more probably of my personality, and I think all those things combined, especially the opportunity here with the Mets. To me, it was something that man I wanted to sign up for, and glad to be here.
You mentioned there was some feels on it early. Can you take us
Hmm.
through this? Were you and your agent putting out, "Hey, I'm willing to start," or teams calling and saying, "We've seen
Hmm.
your stuff. We think it can translate"? What teams were interested? Can you take us through that,
Hmm.
especially early part of free agency, of how this evolves to where you end up being a starting pitcher?
Yeah, the World Series ended, and I mean it was never even before and even after after the end of the days after, and just you processing the season, what was going on, the upcoming off season. It was never really like an internal drive of like, man, let's go be a starting pitcher. Let's make this happen. That was never really, something that was, on my mind as soon as things ended. And as the off season started to unfold just a little bit, it was pretty early on. My agent, approached me and said, "Hey, there's been a couple of questions about just the starting possibility. Is that something is in the realm of possibility? Something he's thought about?" And so he come to me with that idea, and after giving some thought, I was like, hey, I've kind of been going this direction with a pitch arsenal and pitch mix. I believe I can do it. I've still wanted to do it, and I mean, let's see what's out there. And I think as he started seeing what else was out there, it was pretty soon we found out there was going to be a real possibility of having a chance to start. And so once I knew that, I kind of knew that was the direction I pretty much wanted to go. And there was a decision there at the end of kind of where to go and the best fit for it. And the Mets was for me the clear choice there at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you would know best. It fits your personality.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're a very smart fellow, a
Mm-hmm.
valedictorian from your high school class, and analytical, and gives you a chance to really think about things. But you said you liked being a closer.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much criticism that comes with being a closer anywhere, but particularly in New York. How did you endure that? And last year, I felt like you gave up a lot of lucky rounders that went through, and didn't really have the stats that you should have had. But how did you deal with all that?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a perspective to it. I think there's no better place to play baseball in New York, and the relieving was what I was doing, and it was something that I think adding a pitch when I got to New York was something that kind of helped take me to the next level. I added the sweeper, and it really kind of opened my arsenal and helped my sinker out. But I think when you experience baseball in New York, and there's a lot of emotions that come with it. I think you know, the feeling of, hey, man, like the sky is falling, or man, this is the best thing in the world. Just those extremes, for me, they excite me because it's like in those moments, who can have the clearest vision? Who can still have the belief? That's the separator. And, for me, having that challenge of, experiencing the roller coaster, if you will, um, I don't know if it's my personality, but it excited me. It's like in those moments, who can rise and see through the fog and get things done. And there's no better place to experience that and do that. Especially in a closer role in New York. So it's constant a challenge. It challenged me in ways that may be better. It's a position where you have to rely on your teammates. I think just being in that clubhouse with those guys, um, it's a position where they have your back, and that through good times, bad times, you can go out there with the confidence and knowing that, hey, this is all nine of us going at this guy. And um, like I said, it was a great 3 years. I enjoyed every second of it.
You mentioned great 3 years. It was one of
Mhm,
probably Brian Cashman's best trades to bring
mhm,
you from Pittsburgh to the Bronx.
mhm.
Uh, did they talk to you about staying either as a reliever or a starter along the way, or did things move quickly away from them?
Yeah, once I basically decided to go the starting route, there were teams that were interested in me as a reliever, but because the markets were a little separated, and some teams just they weren't in position to go with the kind of figure out the relieving situation yet, and so that kind of pushed things along on the starting route. And I think there's some teams that were interested in me as a reliever, but it was a little early for that. And
But the Yankees in
mhm,
specific, Clay, did they
mhm,
kind of make a move for you on either area? Trying, hey, would you like to come back as
mhm.
a reliever? Would you like to try to start for us? Did they talk at all to you?
Yeah, there was some interest coming back as a reliever, but they were one of the teams that they probably needed a little bit more time to figure some things out. And even there was some interest, both ways. Like I said, there was, but at the end of the day, I knew I wanted to be a starter, and wanted to go that route. So it kind of pushed things a little ahead of some teams on the relieving side.
Yeah, I mean, the Yankees looked
Hmm.
like they were kind of full up on the rotation. Now they and many other teams would love to have you as a starter, I'm sure. But tell me about the changeup. Jeremy Hefner, who's a frequent guest of the show, tells me that it's real, and that means it's great, at least in his mind. Is it as good as he thinks it is? And how did you said you messed around with it. Well, how did that develop into something good, just messing around with something?
Yeah, I mean, I forget when exactly it was last year in the middle of the year, but relievers oftentimes get on the mound before the game. If you haven't thrown in a day or so, you'll get on the mound, touch the mound, and throw some pitches. And we have some strings up down there to show the strike zone and the trackman's running. And occasionally we'll a few of us will grab a ball and we'll just stand on the mound with no catcher and try to throw it through the strings and try different pitches. And so one day it may have been me, and it was maybe Tommy Canley and Weaver, a couple of guys with good change ups. And all right, let's see if we can throw a change up, through the strings, and let's look at the movement. And I was like, Weaver, show me your grip. I just threw it, and I was like, wow, that wasn't too bad. And I was like, you know, we'll keep throwing this and see if there's something there. And I just we kept throwing it as kind of just a fun thing to do for the rest of the year. But there was a little confidence that, hey, I could throw a changeup if I need to. And I think that evolved into off season. It's like, hey, I know I can do this, but let's see if I can improve on it. And there's been this new grip that some players are starting to try, called it's the kick change up. It's really just you're spiking when your fingers to help the ball spin a little bit more beneficial to use the seams and get a better axis that it's spinning on. And after some tinkering, I started getting the ball moving, and I mean honestly better than my sinker into the negative vert. And that's kind of when I realized that maybe we're onto something here. Um, and yeah, it's one of those things where you have to throw it to hitters and see how they respond to it. And got some swing and miss early on with it. Got some ground balls, so I think it's just one more weapon, especially against lefties, as I'll probably be seeing a few more of those to just showing something different and really keep them off balance.
Clay, I think you and I had an extended conversation about this earlier in spring training in your clubhouse. We're just throwing off the idea of, you added a sweeper when you were with the Yankees. You added a four-seamer last year, late in the year to kind of go along with it. You just added a changeup. As John mentioned, there's a marriage here. You're very bright. You're adaptable, but there's also a modernity that like wasn't there the first time you're a starter with the Pirates, right? 5, 6, 7 years ago. I wonder how you think about this in married, how you're able to very quickly today move on to a next pitch?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I was even coming out of high school, I was super raw. I mean, I don't know if I ever took a pitching lesson. I mean, I was just, I was just super raw. And I think the development process was probably a little slower with me, and there was a little more learning I had to do because of that. And, I think it's something even when I was, starting in AAA that the onset of the technology still hasn't, really come on yet. And, for me, really understanding my pitches and how they were moving and how my grips affected them really sped up a lot of the development for me and really kind of excelled me to the next level. And that started, probably around that 2021 time frame. And so it was something that really helped me, with my sinker, really figured, what my best sinker was, how to command it, how to hold it. And, I think just part of me, I'm very curious. I'm adaptable. I'm a learner. I think, just those things with the pitch design technology has really kept me engaged on that front of, how can I keep getting better? And like you said, I added the sweeper, when I went to the Yankees, the pitch that kind of really took me to the next level. And I think something I enjoy doing, it's a part of me. And I think, this next step, of my career, of being able to go back to the starter and continue just the same process I've been doing, just I'm adding another pitch or so and really expanding the arsenal. And I think just the starting role really gives me the opportunity to continue just that journey and that process.
I mean, there are a lot of big differences between being a reliever and a starter. And as a closer, you're a one inning guy. Now, in spring training, you've been throwing multiple innings. You are a big guy with a big arm, but what are your thoughts about as you go into this? How many are you going to be? I mean, now it's considered 6 inning guy is considered spectacular. When I was in grade school, you're supposed to throw 8 or 9 innings. I don't know what do you think you're going to be able to do as a starter? And do you know where you line up yet in terms of 1, 2, 3? I mean, right now there are 3 known starters on the mat, so you're either pitching game 1, 2, or 3, I think. But do
I
you
was
know where
hoping
you
you.
line up?
I was wondering if you had that information yet.
I'm in
I
Arizona.
don't know. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I think I'm going into it as, hey, like, I have an ability to pitch to contact, of generate weak contact. That's been a strength of mine, just as a pitcher. So I think taking advantage of that in the starting role will be beneficial where I can lean on that. Obviously, I have the ability to get some swing and miss when I need to, but I have some ground ball pitches that I can trust, and hopefully I can be efficient, in that regard and throw some innings. I think that um, can be a quality that is a strength of mine. But there's so many things to measure nowadays. Like we were talking about the pitch design, but just there's a way to measure workload now. There's a way to measure strength, and so it's really just it's going to be a monitoring process of, hey, go out and give us your best, every fifth, sixth day, and we'll evaluate. You'll see where your strength ranges are. We'll see how your body's responding, and we'll just monitor it. If things, stay within my range of what I need to be, we're going to keep rolling. And I don't think there's really, any limits, I'm putting on it in regard of certain numbers or whatever it may be. But I really trust these guys here, the way they're processed and the way they just go about pitching, the way they go about monitoring things, the strength and the rehab staff here. I mean, they're top notch. So there's a lot of trust and faith in just that process of we're going to monitor things and expect to go be my best every fifth, sixth day.
Clay, on the subject of starting pitching, sadly, your teammate last year, Gerrit Cole, needed Tommy John surgery last year. The player, the team. How do you think both will progress through this? Gerrit through his rehab, and how will the Yankees handle not having their ace now for at least this season and probably a part of next year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in a day and age where it seems like, 2 Tommy Johns is not rare anymore. For Gerrit to make it this long in his career, to throw as hard as he had for this long, it's truly been remarkable. And I know it's tough. It's tough on him. Probably it's a hard thing for anybody to swallow. I mean, you're missing time. The game's taken away from you for a little bit, but I mean, it's been impressive what he's been able to do as far as with his health, the innings he's thrown, the velocity he's thrown with, and so yeah, I mean, he's truly been incredible, but and it's it's tough. I know it's tough on him. Nobody, his news nobody wants to hear, but man, he's a guy that's he set the benchmark in a lot of ways. But losing a guy like him is going to it's tough for any team. But at the same time, every team needs starting pitching, and so their pitching has found a way over the past few years. So I'm sure that there's guys that are going to have to step up and they'll have to fill the role somehow.
We've been speculating since the decision was made why Juan Soto also went from the Yankees to the Mets. My speculation, and I'm not entirely kidding about this. You are pretty close to Soto. It feels like for a slugger and a reliever. I'm saying he went to the Mets because you're there, but what can you tell us about Soto? Because I do feel like, considering you're out in the bullpen, you're a reliever. You come from different walks of life and everything. What have you noticed about Soto and Soto as a Met in particular?
Yeah, I mean, Juan, he seems to be fitting in, great over here, which, I think that's a draw over here is the people that are over here and how they communicate and relate to each other and how they treat each other. Going in, there's hopes of that. And I think getting here, when you feel it, you feel that it's real. And I think it's been no different for him. I mean, he's felt the, just the care. The people here are special, and he's fit right in. And I think when you have a guy like him, where he's taken care of, he could. I mean, on the field, he can do special things. And so yeah, it's been great. I mean, there's a lot of smiling, a lot of fun, and so he's looks like Juan Soto to me, which I think anybody will sign up for that. So it's I'm glad to be teammates with him still. Like I said, great teammate, great friend, great player, and I'm glad to get to watch him for a few more years here.
Just to drill down on that further, you'd got to watch him all of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say you think Juan Soto because he's coming to Citi Field as a national or as a Padre, and then you watch 700 plate appearances and maybe you see 10 bad swings in a season and you go, wow, it's really something to watch it every day. You're, again, have a very
Mm-hmm.
analytical pitching mind. What was it like to watch 700 plate appearances of Juan Soto last year?
Yeah, I mean, there's never. It just felt like every single at bat was the same exact, at bat. There's never, he's going to get himself out right here. Or never a point in the season where you're like, man, it just you don't really feel it right here. He's in a slump. You know, he just never got that feeling that we didn't have a chance when Juan was up. Every single at bat was a tough at bat. Never gives anything away. He's ultra competitive every at bat. I mean, it's really remarkable just how consistent his at bats are. And as a pitcher, it's just you get that spot in the lineup. There's never a break. I mean, it wears guys down. It affects the following at bats. And so, man, just to have his presence in a lineup and his bat there, it's special. It's why he's a one of a kind player.
The last thing I want to ask you is
Mm-hmm.
about your journey. We did mention
Mm-hmm.
earlier that you were valedictorian in high school. I'm sure you could have gone to college being valedictorian. Why were you so, and you were raw as a pitcher,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, why were you so sure, or at least why did you decide to become a pitcher? I think your dad is a minister or preacher or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So, not an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about your
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah. Out of high school, there was a high priority on education, and I was committed to go to Auburn. But it was before the what do they call it now, the slots, or what you call it. So basically, instead of putting a round on it, I said, hey, here's the dollar amount I'm signing for, and if the team's willing to draft me, give us money, I'm ready to roll. If not, I'm going to college. And so I knew that dwindled a lot of the teams down, and Pittsburgh was a team that was on me early, had a lot of communication with them. I met just a lot of their guys, Kyle Stark, Greg Smith, Joe Delicari. And I was super impressed with just how they went about things, how they, care for people. I think my parents really appreciated that, how they developed, not just the baseball side, but, you as a person. And we're really impressed with that. And then honestly, I think going into it, there was an organization that we wanted to be with. And that number didn't scare them away. They were, that draft, I think they set a record amount of of money spent in 2011. They spent some money on Garrett, Josh Bell, Glass now, me. I mean, there's a lot of guys. They poured a lot of money into that draft and um, a lot of good players. So, yeah, I mean, that was kind of the route I went. And, as soon as I was drafted by them, just kind of waited to the deadline and see what happened. And they said, we're ready to kind of roll with this. And I was pumped to get the journey started. I know I wanted to play baseball. I love baseball. I just enjoyed the process of it. So, I'm glad things worked out there with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean that was an people don't often recall this, but that was an all-time great draft that they had. I think it was Trey Turner in on that list
I think
too.
that yeah,
And
Trey
who
Turner.
else was it?
He didn't
Was
sign, but yeah, I think they may have drafted him.
Cole, Bell, second round, and what you were ninth
Uh,
or what round?
yeah, so I was ninth. Alex Dickerson was that draft. Colton Brewer. I think he's Brewer still playing. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a couple guys I'm missing, but yeah, it was a great draft. Great draft.
Uh, just as a way to wrap this up, Clay, and again,
Mhm.
John and I can appreciate so much you joining us. We know it's a busy time of the year getting ready. You mentioned like such a good vibe in Met Camp. They seem to have it last year. They are trying to change, their reputation, their history. The Yankees have clearly been the team in New York for over 3 decades now. I wonder if we could drill down on that a little. Like, why is it good there? What are you feeling? Because you know what winning looks like. You did a lot of winning in New York, not the ultimate one because you didn't pull the World Series down last year. But you know what winning feels like on the other side. Why is it good there?
Yeah, it's definitely you can feel the energy of, hey man, there's something going on here. There's something being created here that wants to be sustainable, but also very exceptional. And I think um, people know the expectations. They're out there. It's a great team. They had a great run last year. Um, but the standard here is like, hey, we want to win a World Series. The Mets we're going for a World Series. And I think that's met with a lot of different ways. You felt that it's not just about getting the most X's and O's out of a player on the field, but it's like how can we surround the player with the most resources on and off the field to be the best version of themselves. And I think when you do that, special things can happen on the field. There's a bond that takes place, and it's more than just getting 1+1. You're getting a little bit more than that. And I think that's something they believe in here. They believe in people, and like there's a lot of great players, and so when you combine all those things, special things can happen. And the sights are high. Like I said, we're looking to bring a World Series back, to the Mets, and there's a lot of enthusiasm here right now.
Clay, one of the things John and I get to say on this show a lot is
Mhm.
we really appreciate a player who gives us a lot of time and a lot of
Mhm.
insight, and that's an easy
Mhm.
one with you. You're
Mhm.
a great guy to deal with. Best of luck
Mhm.
this season, health, performance, and thank you so much for joining us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.
Appreciate it, guys. It was a blast.
John and I, of course, thank Clay Holmes for joining us on the show. John, hit or error?
I'm going to give a hit to the older pitchers. I know at the moment Scherzer's got a little bit of a thumb situation, but he was dominating in spring training. I don't think a thumb thing is going to stop him. I just watched Justin Verlander, 42 years old, 2 years older than Scherzer, last night, pitch in Scottsdale. He looked fantastic. 5 innings, 1 run. You can say it's against the A's. Hey, in spring training, the A's are pretty good. So Giants are looking good, but Verlander looking really, really good, throwing 93 to 96. And even at age 42, he looks great, still performing. And of course, since I'm doing this on the 40 plus pitchers, I want to wish happy birthday to Rich Hill, who turned 45 yesterday. And I'm not counting him out either. I expect him back sometime this year.
Well, the Yankees need pitching. Maybe they have Rich Hill's number. Seems like you have Rich Hill's number. Maybe you could share it with the Yankees since they need pitching. Maybe Ron Guidry, anybody at this point. John, on the complete other side of the age spectrum is we have the spring breakout stuff going on soon, March 13th to 16th in Major League Baseball. I believe it's 16 games, 71 of the top 100 prospects will play in some form of fashion. And I I think it's a great idea. I do think that this is the time of year where people want to see the young players. You know how it is. The Met fans in your life asking, have you seen Sprout? The Yankee fans in your life, do you think Spencer Jones's swing could get into whatever? I think
Right.
everyone always loves next, and then they kind of move on quickly, right? Like 2 years ago, Jason Dominguez hit like 4 homers in a week before he needed Tommy John. I think suggested a trade that offseason. People were acting like I was trying to trade everybody's firstborn baby in trading Jason Dominguez. Now he can't catch a fly ball. Everyone wants to trade him. Like everybody loves prospects when they're prospects before we see them play all the time. Anyway, I think it's a great idea. I would even do more of it. I might even do it earlier in spring training. As the players, the older players, the more veteran players are building up their innings, their legs, etc. So I think it's great to showcase the future of the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Two hits for us. We're a very optimistic, very positive mood
Yeah.
today. I like that. Yeah, it's great, especially for teams that really aren't contending this year. That aren't. I don't want to say not trying, but they're not contending. The White Sox have prospects now. Finally, that's a good thing. The Marlins have prospects, so I think it's particularly good for the teams that are not contending. I'm not going to make a snarky remark about the poor Yankees now. I still think they could be a contender, but Marlins, White Sox fans, I think they're going to be very excited about the next 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, for sure. We're always excited to work with Tommy Hogan, our producer. Thank you, Tommy, as always, for everything. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, please rate and review us, follow us. These things do matter, engagement. So we hope you do engage with us there. We hope you engage with us on the New York Post Sports YouTube page. And hey, we're getting close to the regular season. We hope you stick with us here on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.